Previously on Blogz.
James Marsh's official intro track. James, how do you feel about that?
Well, that's absolutely fine. Yes, I'm sat here in my 1980s suit with a selection of leather-clad lovelies dancing behind me. So that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Well, second time to the show. James Marsh is, of course, the greatest voice in cricket since that of Charles Fortune, and a very knowledgeable one, of course. So, James, this isn't going to be a very long chat, because I don't want to take you through too much of what happened over in Australia. Of course, the 5-0 drubbing of the Ashes. So I think what we all just want to kind of get to, and I thought you'd be the best guy to talk to about that, is where did England really go from here? I know many people shared their views on this on some sort of written platform, but what's your take on it? Because as you share a few things, I'm going to share a couple of stats here and there, which are nothing short of worrying. Chief amongst that is the fact that if it wasn't for some plucky resistance by KP late in the series, Carberry would have been the highest scoring English batsman with a couple of belligerent knocks here and there. So, for me, the batting was the biggest catastrophe. Take it from there.
Well, indeed it was. Well, going forward, it's interesting you mention Carberry, because I mean he was a player who got a lot of starts and did look quite good, but then he got bogged down, particularly against Lyon. And I think looking forward, it's interesting to see that Graham Thorpe has now come in as batting coach for the ODI series against Australia. He did the same on the New Zealand tour. It was pretty successful. The players seemed to respond to him. And so in terms of maybe personnel changes within the setup, people are saying Gooch might have to carry the can. He's the present batting coach for the debacle. And if Thorpe came in, just thinking about Carberry, I mean, Thorpe is certainly someone that's going to be able to pass on his great nerdling ability to someone like Carberry. Now, I'm not saying that's the answer to England's woes, just more nerdling, although it would be a start. But I just think that's one aspect where Thorpe coming in permanently as full-time coach could possibly make a difference. I suppose, more broadly speaking, we've got the issue over whether Flower stays or goes. I don't say this lightly. I think Andy Flower is a great man. He's someone who's had to work in close proximity with both Robert Mugabe and Giles Clarke throughout his career, which is a duo you wouldn't wish on anyone. But I think he should actually stand aside. And but I suppose the question is, he would then come in. We could be a bit sort of left field like the Aussies, and they obviously let Lehman come in with limited experience. So maybe it will be the case that Ashley Giles, the King of Spain, as he's known, might actually get the reins for the Test side as well. But it all remains to be seen at present.
But James, I've seen sort of volatile Eastern European countries have less regime changes in the English cricket team, because when you think about it, whenever there's huge pressure, or when South Africa tour England, the captain goes, and then there's always doubts about the coach. The next question would just be Alistair Cook. There was a guy who was a phenomenal opening batsman, and at any given stage, I think in the last sort of 5 years, you would want to lead with him in a world team. He was very good, he was very solid, decent strokes, and he had that ability to stick in when it was tough. But look at him now. It's just like a different guy. And he's got that sort of Mike Atherton despondent face in the interviews now.
Well, I would like to see us stay with a bit of tradition and consistency and just get rid of our captain, as you say, when South Africa tour England. That is traditional. But yeah, well, you say about Cook, I mean, I woke up this morning and thinking things couldn't get worse, but I woke up to find Cook had been dismissed second ball by Brett Lee. Brett Lee playing for the Prime Minister's 11 against England in an ODI warm-up match. So we've just added a nice sort of hue of nostalgia to our winter of discontent. Now, I think, with Cook, it's interesting. I mean, I think judging captain and judging captains is one of the most difficult things as a cricket fan you can do. I'd much prefer to leave it to Mike Brearley, to be honest. But it was quite clear that he just had no plans whatsoever during a lot of the Test series, and he just looked broken both in the field and when he was batting. So I think possibly the thing people say about the Flower regime is that there's too many laptops, too many analysts, it's too suffocating. Boyd Rankin coming in for his debut said he was suffocated by nerves. Kerrigan, our spinner who came in, didn't bowl very well. He's clearly affected by nerves. So, I think maybe if Flower went, it might possibly give Cook a bit of space, a bit of time to, sort of flourish as his own man in the captaincy role, perhaps.
Yeah, it could be.
He said optimistically.
James, it's Sean here. What struck me about this Ashes series a lot is that, yes, well, I found the English batting collapses to be possibly the biggest headline-making problems about them, but there was actually just deteriorated into every facet of play, and I mean this respectfully. Every single facet of play just had massive problems with it. The seam bowling, the spin bowling, the top order, middle order, and the batting,
the catching,
and the catching, and the selection. Now, well, I just find this could be just far too many scapegoats just to round up a whole bunch of individuals and say these were the problems with them. So while it might go to Flower, now while I understand that Flower's a really good coach, could it not just be saying that maybe your coach just has a limit to how much he can work with the side? There's an expiry period for when they've passed on all that they need to know, and then they need to move on.
Are you calling Flower Mickey Arthur-esque?
Ooh.
Well, people say there's a bit of breakdown of discipline in the England side, so maybe Mickey Arthur could come in, set a bit of homework for the side.
He needs a job.
That's perhaps what we need. But yeah, I know what you mean. But I think the thing is, Flower's success, and it's unheard of for someone who started watching cricket in the late 80s. Flower's success with England is unheard of. He's won 30 matches, 30 tests as England coach, and I should point out that KP averages about 60 in the 27 of those 30 tests he's played. So if we're on the scapegoat subject, that is my tuppence worth on whether it should be KP. But just coming back to Flower, I think his whole regime is built on discipline and team ethics, and England don't seem to have that. As you say, they were just so ragged, and it's just not what you expect from a Flower side. So I don't know if it is necessarily knee-jerk to say that he should go. It isn't just this series. We were destroyed in the Emirates against Pakistan 3-0. You shellaced us 2-0 at home last year. We were very, very scrappy in that series against New Zealand, and we were only saved because of Pryor's great rearguard action. That was when Pryor used to be able to know which end of a bat to hold. So I don't think, people have been accused of being knee-jerk in saying Flower should go, but I'm not sure it is really that knee-jerk. I think there has been a very discernible decline over the last couple of years.
Okay, well, to the next point. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I think that's how the saying goes. Your take on Stokes, that ginger New Zealander? Because he was kind of seen as this lone light that came out of it, although our mate Dennis Friedman wrote something about him being no better than, Bailey.
Yeah, well, I don't know. He's had some bad press for someone who's come into an absolute rotten side.
That's a problem when you got a copper top, though. You're always going to get judged unfairly.
Well, I know this from personal experience, so I do have a certain bit of empathy with him. But no, that was a great knock. The century he made, a huge amount of character, which adds skill, two things which were sadly lacking from the rest of our top order throughout the series. But, I think his bowling, he's someone who's going to go for a few, but he's one of these bowlers that sort of somehow makes things happen. I don't know, people might snort at this, but he reminds me a little bit of James Faulkner in some ways. He's a bowler that some people might not quite understand why he gets wickets, and he might be sneered at a little bit, but he somehow does. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how he goes moving forward. He's obviously playing in the ODI series at the moment, which we've started off in similar fashion to the Test.
Yeah, well, I think you look at a guy like that and take his batting and bowling abilities aside, he's got a bit of fight in him, and I think it always comes down to the fact that if a guy like that can be put into a team where there's a top four where someone's getting 100, or you've got a bowling lineup where, say, James Anderson bowls the way people think he can bowl. I say people, it's some very few people that actually still rate him. So I think he's definitely a guy for the future, but it's a lot of ifs, and there's a lot of team dynamic ifs in my opinion, because a talent like that will get worn down if he's got to hold his bat at like 60 for 7.
But the thing that I found about Stokes is that the introduction of him, not just his performances were encouraging from an England point of view, it's just how the balance of the team becomes better from a point of view. Because looking at, I mean, they tried so many number 6 batsmen down the years, which just became a revolving door of underachievers and poor test averages. To have a guy that can bowl a bit and do a job as a fourth seamer, for the guy that could bat in the top 6, top 7, I think it just worked even better, because in the days when even England were at their peak, it was very, very reliant on Graham Swan, just having 3 seamers and a spinner. So now if you could pull off 4 and a spinner and still have a batting order that could have promise, you might be better off in the long run. Oddly enough.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, just thinking about balance. I mean, we've got in the ODI series at the moment. We had in that first match, we had Joss Buttler coming in at number 8, which is just, it seems absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you don't wait for your butler. No one's ever made a pun on his name, so I just wanted to get in first.
Solid.
And it's so yeah, I think that is something England struggle with. We've got Ravi Bopara, as the 5th seamer for the in the ODI series.
Is that on PlayStation or on the field?
Sorry?
Is that on PlayStation or actually on a field?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is. Oh God, dear me, Ravi. He's never lived down being in Kandy, a UNESCO site, and tweeting, "Nothing to do here. Guess it's going to be a day on PlayStation." So that was one to really enhance the England team's sort of credentials as cultural tourists there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we line up. I mean, we're not playing a test until Sri Lanka arrive in June, which I think everyone's sort of already sort of seeing as a real sort of comfort blanket. I don't think they're expecting too much from Sri Lanka, but I mean, Sri Lanka have just beaten Pakistan in the test. They've taken the lead in their series there, and I mean, they're a team written off more often than Lindsay Lohan's cars, but I think they will be more of a challenge than people think, because they're coming towards the end of June, so the pitches in England probably aren't going to be that green and spicy. So yeah, that's going to be interesting, the England team for that series. And that's the sort of fluffer series, because as you say, we've got India arriving for 5 test series after that.
I don't think that's going to go well for England, but we'll pick that up closer to the time, because it'll be interesting to see how India develop. Obviously with every IPL, their souls do diminish slightly, so that might hinder their batting. James, we have to cut it off there, but where else can we find you on the internet? We obviously know you as a very talented writer first and foremost. Anything worth looking at recently?
Well, yeah, just on pavilionopinions.com, I've obviously been doing my various post-mortems, so obviously there's not been enough post-mortems of the England Ashes performance, so I've done a couple on that recently. Yep, so you can catch me there. You can also catch me with my better half, Nishant, or at Out Cricket, as he's best known. We're on SoundCloud /Radio Cricket. We've just done a new Radio Cricket, so if people want to catch us, we're on there as well. So
cool, brilliant. And of course, you are involved in the pilot that you guys create, to Spot the Googly. If you go onto YouTube and type in Spot the Googly, there's a great cricket show that basically Nishan and James put together. Very entertaining, and I really do wish you guys all the best of luck on that. Hopefully it gets picked up and taken forward, much like the career of Stuart Broad, which, thanks to his dad, he kind of kept being selected, unless... Can't see any other reason why.
Look, you'll be on a much healthier wicket with Nishant on the Stuart Broad abuse.
But it was an entire English piece. We didn't mention him once. I had to slip him in at the end.
That's fine.
James, thanks so much for your time. And we'll definitely chat soon, man.
All right, nice to speak to you again. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.
Visual radio. Radio like you've never seen it before. Balls.co.za